Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Counted! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! John Morant! Insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. On today's episode, let's do the trope where we grade the Grizzlies offseason. It does feel like the Grizzlies offseason is done. Of course, technically, they could still at any moment make some big swing for a player by trading KCP and multiple first-round picks or something, but no one thinks that's going to happen. I haven't recorded an episode in over a week because it's the offseason. Nothing is happening. I mean, we are gearing up for the schedule release. The NBA schedule will be released on Thursday. We already know the Grizzlies' preseason games. We know they are going to Europe, but we'll find out the rest of the schedule this Thursday. So that's exciting. That's something to look forward to. There is other Grizzlies news, sort of. The long-rumored and partially confirmed Jaren Jackson Jr. jersey number change is now official. Jaren posted on social media that he's changing his number from 13 to 8 to honor his father, Jaren Jackson Sr., who played in the NBA. This also happens to be Jaren's 8th season coming up. Who are the best number 8s in Grizzlies team history? I'll give you a second. I mean, I equate the number 8 maybe strangely to James Ennis. That's who I think of the most. Michael Dickerson is the best player in Grizzlies franchise history to wear the number 8. Most recently, Lamar Stevens wore it last year, but he only wore it that one season. Zaire Williams wore it. Marshawn Brooks, notable number 8. Quincy Pondexter wore it one season. Of course, he's the number 20 as far as we're concerned. It's an interesting choice by Jaren. The one thing that I think needs to be asked about the jersey number change, how much does this reduce the odds of Jaren Jackson Jr. having his jersey retired by the franchise? I feel like massively. I mean, let's say the Grizzlies win a title and Jaren is a key part of that. Let's say he's the best player because he outplays Ja or something. I'm just going with the theoretical. If the Grizzlies win a title, do they retire his number 8? Do they retire both numbers? That feels unlikely. So I don't know if Jaren fully considered the legacy / jersey retirement ramifications of changing his number. I'm going to guess it had little or no effect on the decision. Does it matter? Of course not. Change your number. Very excited. I'm just messing around, I guess, with the jersey retirement. But I do wonder what effect that could have. Now, let's talk about the Grizzlies offseason. Actually, before we do it, a reminder, if you want to support my show, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you want to join my listener Slack, if you want to get bonus episodes, if you want to play fantasy football and basketball with me and other listeners, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right. This offseason, how would we grade it? Let's go over what the Grizzlies did. And I'm not even going to go over like front office decisions as far as personnel. I mean, they hired Tomas Isolo. Should that weigh in? I guess so, but I'm a person who doesn't pretend to have an opinion on how coaches are hired. Should they have interviewed a bunch of other candidates? Maybe. I can see the pros to that. Was Tomas Isolo the best guy? I don't know. Hopefully. I can't feign to know what goes into all that. Where when it comes to like player transactions, I feel like I understand that a little bit better. When I assess what players are going to help you win games, I feel like I have a good grasp on that. So I'm not going to weigh in like the coaching staff they hired and then also giving Tomas Isolo the contract as your full-time head coach. But the player moves that were made, the transactions that occurred, of course, the biggest one is they traded Desmond Bane. They traded Desmond Bane for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, 4 first-round picks, which was this year's pick in 2025. Also, a valuable 2026 pick that included the Suns pick swap, then the 28 and 30 picks from the Magic, also an additional swap in 2029. The Grizzlies then used 2 of those picks to get Cedric Coward in the draft. They also drafted Javon Small and Jemai Meshack in the late second round. The Grizzlies then they bought out Cole Anthony, stretched his contract to create the last remaining space needed to renegotiate Jaren Jackson Jr. and give him an extension, keeping him from entering unrestricted free agency next year. A part of that was also letting your free agents go. Luke Kennard gone, Marvin Bagley gone, Lamar Stevens, number 8, gone. The Grizzlies also made a pretty big free agent splash by signing Ty Jerome to the room exception. This is the first notable free agent, or the first free agent making more than the minimum they signed in the offseason. I think that's all the correct caveats. Since Tyus Jones. They hadn't used their MLE or anything. Like, they signed Derrick Rose to the minimum. Bismack Biyombo was signed for more than the minimum. That was an emergency replacement there. But the Ty Jerome, I would say easily the biggest free agent splash the Grizzlies have made since Tyus Jones. So they signed Ty Jerome. They also traded Jay Huff to the Pacers for a couple of second-round picks. They replaced him with Jock Landale on a 1-year minimum. They were also, because of stretching Cole Anthony, able to give Cam Spencer a 3-year deal at the minimum. So that's everything they did. How do we grade that? Well, I think, first of all, we have to set up, what is the goal? What's the goal? What is the rubric by which we assign a grade? Also, it's hard to look at these moves as just individual moves that happened this summer. Sometimes we have to weigh in the big picture. Like, if you just look, for example, at the Jaren Jackson Jr. thing or the Cole Anthony waving and stretching him. If you would say, okay, they waved and stretched Cole Anthony so they could keep Jaren from entering unrestricted free agency. That's an easy win. You would give that an A or a B or something. You might push back and say, listen, Cole Anthony could have been a valuable vet off the bench. He would be a spark plug scorer, be especially useful when Ja Morant misses games. Also, notably, very important, nice salary. A $13 million salary is unbelievably useful as matching salary in a trade. So that's the pushback to waiving Cole Anthony. But when you weigh keeping Jaren Jackson Jr. or having some dead money on the books for the next few seasons, you say, oh, easy win. Let's keep Jaren Jackson Jr. But that isn't everything that went into keeping Jaren Jackson Jr. There's a much longer history of moves that occurred to keep Jaren Jackson Jr., to give him more money this year, to raise his salary by $13 million or whatever it was this season. A lot of stuff went into that. They had to salary dump Marcus Smart. They used the 18th pick to do that. Last offseason, they had to salary dump Zaire Williams. They used a second-round pick to do that. They got rid of Jake LaRavia. Everyone's praising the Lakers for acquiring Jake LaRavia. The Grizzlies got rid of him so they could keep Jaren Jackson Jr. So like the total list of things that went into keeping Jaren Jackson Jr., not even considering the opportunity cost. Let's just say the list of things to clear the cap space for Jaren. First round pick, second round pick, got rid of Marcus Smart, got rid of Jake LaRavia, got rid of Zaire Williams, got rid of Cole Anthony. Oh, by the way, you also traded Desmond Bane. Now, you still could have kept Desmond Bane and worked out the thing with Jaren if you got rid of John Konchar's money. Maybe stretching John Conchar would have gotten you close. I'm not sure. But all those things went into giving Jaren this contract. The opportunity cost thing I would mention is they didn't sign free agents the last few years because they didn't want to have anybody's extra salary going into this season. They didn't improve the team last year because they wanted to make sure the books were clean to give Jaren this money this offseason. They, I think, cost them, I don't know if they cost themselves playoff wins, but it feels like they did. They made the team worse last year at the trade deadline. They did a terrible job, in my opinion, last offseason. Like, this goes back to what's the point, or what's the objective, what's the goal? The goal is, in Zach Kleiman's own words, is to win a championship. And I quote, "The goal is and continues to be to win a championship." That's Zach Kleiman back in 2022. He said some version of that basically every offseason. Quote, "The decision-making North Star continues to be what's going to maximize our chances of doing so, building in a sustainable way." The goal is sustainable success. I would amend that to say, the goal is winning a championship, like Zach Kleiman said. I think the sustainable success part has to be sustainable contention. You have to be a contender sustainably. I think that addition that I've made makes my grades maybe a little bit tougher than you see other places. Also, completing my thought finally on the opportunity cost of the Jaren Jackson Jr. contract renegotiation and extension. I mean, not only did you not, I think, maximize your last 2 years, you might have had the big three, Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane era end with the whimper. There's that opportunity cost. Not only did you not trade for another great player to play alongside those guys, also you could just look at it like, oh, you did all these things to create this cap space that you gave to Jaren. What if you went out and signed a free agent with that money, that $15 million you created? You could have gotten a Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Is that a better bit of long-term business? Being a little bit uncomfortable having Jaren going into unrestricted free agency, but trying to make your roster better. If they would have won more games last year, maybe he would have made all NBA and they wouldn't have needed to create all that cap space. So it becomes difficult, I think, grading these things. Last offseason, if you remember, my offseason grade was terrible. I gave them a D-. I did not understand a thing that they did. I understood it. I didn't agree with much of it. In retrospect, we now understand, oh, they did all these things to create cap space. Creating cap space wasn't on my agenda. I was trying to push them to continue to accrue the contracts of good players and then go into the tax. They basically bent over backwards last summer to avoid the tax, but now we understand it's also because they were keeping this quote-unquote flexibility, this optionality open of being able to clear space if needed to retain Jaren Jackson Jr. I thought last summer, and I feel like the consensus was, this wasn't just me, this is what everyone thought until things happened and then everyone changed their opinions. Last summer, coming off a lost season where the team was terrible and injured and Ja Morant started the year on a suspension and it went horribly, you ended up with a lottery pick, but the idea was like, all right, how are we going to now rebuild? We need to get a starting center and we need to upgrade on the wing. We need to get a fourth guy to play with Ja and Jaren and Dez. And what did they do last offseason? They drafted a starting center. I mean, you could say the Zach Edey pick, great. First team all rookie this last year. Good stuff. My objection was they drafted for need. They went into last offseason saying, let's draft our starting center. And I was like, well, how many teams win a playoff series with the rookie starting center? I don't think it's that many. Of course, you think like Derek Lively, you're playing alongside Luka Doncic. But I was like, I have concerns about just drafting a starter if we're considering ourselves to be a contender, a team that's going to win or get out of the first round. And of course, they still could have done other things. They could have used free agency. They could have done trades to bring in other players. So when the offseason was over last year, I'm like, all right, what do? We drafted some rookies, which feels like doubling down on youth again, despite Zach Kleiman saying tripling down on youth was a mistake. It's a frequent thing that happens every single season. Every single season. It's like, well, there's more rookies. There's not veterans. The team right now is not very old. There are not very many. Are there any? Oh, yeah. KCP. I was trying to think of who are the old players. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But last summer, it was, all right, we brought in Zach Edey. We salary dumped Zaire Williams, and that wasn't a big deal as far as losing Zaire Williams. But what that signaled to me last offseason was, oh, they aren't going to trade for another player. We're not bringing in a fourth player. That clearly signaled we're not making a trade in the offseason, and we're also less likely now to trade for a player in the regular season because you got rid of this useful matching salary. So last offseason, I'm like, wait, we salary dumped Zaire Williams just to create cap space to retain Luke Kennard when Luke Kennard felt superfluous instead of signing, I don't know, like a rotation level big or another wing. We kept Luke Kennard, which I felt was a very low priority. They salary dumped a guy. They did not sign any other outside free agents. They didn't make any trades. I was like, that's a bad offseason based on what we were hoping for. To go into the year with saying, oh, yeah, our new players are Jalen Wells and Zach Edey. And, of course, they were great. And the Jalen Wells pick looks amazing. If you want to retroactively change the grade because the draft pick of Jalen Wells was so good, that's fair. I agree to that. But it didn't make the team better. And I said last offseason, going into the year, the Grizzlies are still very good. I just don't think they're going to get out of the first round of the playoffs, and I thought we were trying to get better. I thought we're trying to maximize these years of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. being an underpaid asset, and they didn't do it. And then you compound it with the trade deadline, which, again, the trade deadline was shocking to most people because they didn't use Marcus Smart and a first-round pick to get a player to help them win. They used Marcus Smart and that first-round pick that ended up being the 18th pick this year just to clear cash. And then, of course, the Grizzlies finished the regular season on a terrible run. Taylor Jenkins gets fired. They end up in the play-in. They eke their way into the postseason, but then get swept by the Thunder. So while I didn't understand the point of a lot of things that were happening at the time, that this is all about keeping Jaren Jackson Jr., now that I know that, now that we all know that was the reason, it doesn't change my grade much because what's the goal? For me, the goal is to win playoff games. The goal is to get better. The goal is to be a sustainable contender. I don't think the Grizzlies have been a contender since Brandon Clark and Steven Adams got hurt back in the 2023 season. So now how do I grade this offseason? That was an excessively long preamble. Sorry. I would say it's hard because, again, I don't know how you accept the fact that the Grizzlies are further from contention than ever. Their odds of winning the West, their Vegas odds of winning the title, are as low as they have been since Ja Morant's second season. Jalen Wells and Zach Edey, very promising young players. I think it's a fair argument to say, are they better than Dillon Brooks and Jonas Valanciunas were 3 seasons ago? I think the Grizzlies could be 4th or 5th in the West. I think they're probably play-in bound, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. Of course, they have more picks because of trading Desmond Bane. Like, you just assessing the Desmond Bane trade on its own, you say, that's a really good return. 4 first-round picks and a swap and a useful veteran, arguably 2 useful veterans in Cole Anthony and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You're like, that's a good return. But the things don't happen in a vacuum. You say, or is that the best move to make in the prime of Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr.? It's also hard as Grizzlies fans to even assess what's happened the past couple of years. Because on the one hand, You have a lot of success when the team is healthy. The team last season had the 6th best net rating in the NBA. They were top 10 in offense and defensive rating. One of 5 teams to do that was the Thunder, the Celtics, the Cavaliers, and then the Timberwolves and the Grizzlies. But the way the year ended, it all went so terribly that you kind of forget a lot of that stuff. You also have the success of the 2022 season and the 2023 season, where you raced through the regular season and you honestly looked competitive. You beat the Timberwolves that first playoff breakthrough. You beat the Timberwolves, and then you had a very competitive series against the Warriors. Been over it so many times. They had fourth quarter leads and numerous losses. But then you go to the next year. They did triple down on youth, but also, of course, the Steven Adams injury and the Brandon Clark injuries were massive, and that's why you lose to the Lakers. So there is that success. Even last year, a lot of success. Although last year, you could always correctly maybe point out the winning percentage against bad teams was unreal. But they never beat good teams last year. So there was success with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant. And the idea that they couldn't get there with those guys, I don't think has ever been proven. I think if you don't surround them with great players, that makes it harder. It's also very frustrating where it feels like the NBA has embraced the, quote, no weak link theory, where you're only as good as your worst player. In a time where the Grizzlies are doing the opposite, they just keep kind of hammering away at their depth. And now they've gone even further in that direction, saying we're going to build around Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. and then just surround them with the right role players. And maybe some guy pops. Maybe Cedric Coward turns out to be Jimmy Butler. But it took Jimmy Butler, 4 years to get great. Maybe Edie and Wells level up. So it's a tough task. And I understand always as a fan being optimistic for each season. But when you look at the Grizzlies title odds being 100 to 1 or 150 to 1, you're like, we are a long shot. And you're like, you look at the win totals and you're like, we are not in the top of the conference. And the idea that the Grizzlies are not near the top of the conference in people's predictions, I think is frustrating when you know the path that we've come. And you look back at the 2022 season and say, we had 3 extra first-round picks then. So, how am I supposed to get excited about having multiple extra first-round picks now with a much worse team? So it's tough, and I don't know if I'm even going to give you an answer or a letter grade. I don't mean to cheat you. I didn't write one down when I started recording this episode. The Desmond Bane trade is fine. The most convincing argument that I hear that I agree with, if you're going to be a play-in team, which might be what the Grizzlies were going to be if they kept Desmond Bane, if you're going to be a play-in team, wouldn't you rather have those first-round picks? And yeah, that's a convincing argument. Part of that, of course, I think is ownership. If ownership is never going to let you go into the tax, well then okay. Maybe we can't afford to pay Desmond Bane and also Ja Morant and also Jaren Jackson Jr. If ownership is not willing to spend money, okay, then that goes to what are we grading on? Are we grading on a curve? Are we grading on, I want to build a sustainable, pretty good team, a sustainable team that makes the playoffs? If that's the question, I don't think it's a slam dunk still, because you could say, what's more sustainable? Having Desmond Bane through the last 4 years of him being in his 20s, or having first-round picks? Because first-round picks aren't actually good basketball players. They're chances at good basketball players, but they might not actually be good basketball players. So despite the fact that you bring in all those picks for Desmond Bane, I'm split, man. I mean, Desmond Bane, I think, might be the 7th best player in Grizzlies franchise history. I was trying to organize them for Parker Fleming, who's trying to put together the best 25 players since the Grizzlies have been in Memphis. They're celebrating the 25th anniversary of that. I mean, Desmond Bane is the shooting guard we waited on for forever, 20 years to have an elite shooting guard. So to turn him into all those picks, you say nice transaction. The cap heads and the podcasting nerds, which I consider myself one of, we're oh yeah, great return. But where the Grizzlies are, and if the goal is to win championships, that's tough. Maybe this is a better way to get there, but it's a longer way to get there. So I have mixed feelings on it. The rest of their transactions are easy. I mean, the draft, okay. They paid a lot. Reminder, they paid a lot to move up in the draft. They used a future first-round pick and a second to go from 16 to 11. So they paid a lot to trade up in the draft. In aggregate, they traded Desmond Bane for KCP, the draft rights to Cedric Coward, 2 first-round picks, and a swap. So that makes it, I think, less. I think when you combine those things, which is, I think, the right way to do it, it makes it a little bit less exciting as far as the trade return. So I have more mixed feelings on that. The other moves, I mean, just to grade them individually, like the Jay Huff trade, I might be higher on that than most people. To me, you know how we say, oh, if the Grizzlies are going to cap out as the 6th or 7th best team in the West, might as well trade Desmond Bane for picks. I'm like, all right, if the Grizzlies are the 7th to 9th best team in the West, yeah, trade Jay Huff for 2 second-round picks. Who cares? Who cares? That's so, like, I would give that like a B under the, yeah, trade him for picks. We'll find another player. The Cam Spencer signing, I give it a C-. Why do we have to sign Cam Spencer? I mean, I like Cam Spencer. I liked him more than Luke Kennard at the end of last season. But, like, can he not play on a two-way? Was someone else going to sign him? Do we need to have him for 3 years? What's his ceiling? I don't know. It might turn out to be an unbelievably good signing, but I would give that maybe like a C or a C-. I give Jay Huff, let's say like a B, the Jay Huff trade. Jock Landale, proven deep bench big who can start in a pinch for you at the minimum. Yeah, great. That works for me. Like a B+. And then the Ty Jerome thing, I think is great. I mean, Ty Jerome thing, I'd give that an A. I have concerns that the Cavs chose Sam Merrill over Ty Jerome. Ty Jerome is pretty old. I have concerns about his lack of a track record, that it was like a 1-year perfect season for Ty Jerome. But, I mean, it's only a little bit more than you're paying John Conchar. So I think the Ty Jerome signing, I'd give that an A. So I give it an incomplete just because I don't know how I deal with my feelings that the Grizzlies have not gotten closer to winning a championship. I think the way they're pitching it, the way anyone defends the trade, you say, oh, now we have more avenues to go further. But also, we're hitching our wagon to Ja Morant, which is, it's a little scary. I think depending more on Ja Morant. I mean, Ja Morant is the most exciting player the Grizzlies have ever had. He is probably the most talented player. His peak is the best player in Grizzlies franchise history. We just haven't seen the sustained peak. We haven't seen Ja Morant playing the games. We haven't seen him have that postseason success. He's put up some great postseason numbers, but his early postseason numbers were so amazing. Now we're looking at this really tough run of, like, the Grizzlies have won 2 playoff games with Ja Morant since that playoff series win against the Timberwolves. Ja Morant has played in 2 playoff wins, 1 against the Warriors, 1 against the Lakers. I know they were up by 29 against the Thunder in Game 3. But all that is scary to me. And so now saying, well, we have a little bit more flexibility. We got these picks that we could trade. Stop me if you've heard that before. And maybe Cedric Coward breaks through. Maybe Jalen Wells breaks through. But it is hard, I think, to get overwhelmingly optimistic about the Grizzlies being a contender, about bringing a championship to the Grizzlies. I think they're going to be very competitive. I think they honestly might be a little bit slept on. I haven't done my win totals yet, where I try to figure out where I think every team is at. But, like, the Grizzlies are good. I think they're good. I think they could have some, like, I don't know, like they have a lot of average-ish players now, maybe. So a little bit of depth. Some of that needs to work itself out. Who's going to play among like Cedric Coward and Vince Williams Jr. and Gigi Jackson and John Conchar and Cam Spencer. So there's stuff to work out there. How do the minutes between Ty Jerome and Scottie Pippen Jr. and, how does that shake out playing with John Morant? So they're a good playoff team. Maybe that's too far. They're a decent team that, frankly, if they were in the East, might be competing for home court advantage. And that's another weird thing when you try to assign grades to stuff. Of course, you're working under your team's specific situations. But you look at the Grizzlies right now, you're like, man, tough Western Conference, got rid of Desmond Bane. It's kind of risky. How are they going to stack up? And then you're like, man, if they were in the East, they might be the 4 seed. Like, they're definitely making the playoffs. Everyone's excited about the Hawks. I think the Grizzlies are better than the Hawks. I could be wrong. So I guess I've kind of cheated a little bit. I guess I would give it maybe like if you were forced to give a grade, I might give it like a C-, because the big concern, the big takeaway is like, what's the goal? Is the goal to win championship? Oh, we feel further from a championship than we have in 4 years. I feel that way. I'm not just looking at the Vegas odds. That's how I feel. I agree. I can't imagine the Grizzlies winning multiple playoff series. And the idea that they have flexibility to somehow get better than they were when they had Desmond Bane, I'm like, I don't see how that move's going to happen. And I think truth serum, what's the Grizzlies' path to a championship? I think if you got the truth serum into the decision makers, they would say that 2026 Orlando pick or our pick ending up in the top 5 of next year's NBA draft. So I think the hope maybe for next year is, hey, what if we get two top 10 picks? Not that they're going to go into the year, I think, thinking about their own pick being in the top 10, but I think a lot of teams are in the NBA are going to steer that direction when they start thinking about the incredible draft next year and saying, hey, that's our way to catch up to the Thunder, to get, to the top of this league. So because of that, there is just so much context needed with all of these Grizzlies moves this offseason. And I can understand someone being like, oh yeah, B+, the Desmond Bane trade is great. I always say it's easy to win a trade when your objective is not to improve. Like if you're not trying to win games, you can be the Jazz and you can just trade guys and get picks. You can use your cap space to bring in guys and get picks and say, oh yeah, we won the trade. When you're actually trying to get out of the first round of the playoffs, it's much harder to win trades. The Magic are trying to get out of the first round of the playoffs. The Magic are trying to get to the conference finals. They're trying to get to the finals. They paid a premium in picks to get Desmond Bane. If you say they paid too much, you're like, well, what's the goal? And for them right now, the goal is to win games. And so that's where I get confused. It's hard as far as how to evaluate what the Grizzlies have done or to assign some arbitrary letter grade to what the Grizzlies have done. But as always, offseason grades are for entertainment. We want the best for the team. How you evaluate it, open to interpretation. I'm always excited to hear other people's interpretations too. Anyways, that's all for today. Again, if you want to play fantasy football with me, I'll be doing signups probably in a couple of weeks over at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. That's the best, most direct way to support the creation of this show. I will probably have an episode out later this week because of the schedule release, going over all of that good stuff. Anyways, hope you guys are having a great summer. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.